Hey again, guys. You know what I like to do when Peter B gives me a nice shout out? I like to look at some baseball cards. Peter B, thank you for the kind words. And thank you for participating in my contest. Hopefully, we're going to have some more responses here and see what the winners got. So, I got a couple of pieces I wanted to share with you. Of course, it is now YouTube Sports Card Hall of Fame season. Always a fun time. Always a time to learn about some new channels. I know we don't get dislikes anymore, apparently, but every year, my Hall of Fame ballad would be the one video to get the most dislikes every year. People get heated over it and have strong opinions on it. But as time goes on, more and more and more and more people get in. And it gets bigger and bigger and more inclusive. So I got a few pieces I wanted to share with you. And one is of the greatest quarterback to ever live, Johnny Unitas. This is a 1970 top super square proof. To add to my other ones, I have several of these. Now I say the greatest quarterback that ever lived, half jokingly and half seriously. I know it'll stir up some controversy, and people have already thinking things as soon as I say it. But you know, it is so hard to compare eras in football because of the rule changes, the number of games they play, and it's just a totally different game now. So Johnny Unitas was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers in round 9 of the 55 draft. He was from Pittsburgh, and he never even took a snap in practice. The coach thought he was too stupid to play quarterback and cut him. He went back to working at the steel mill, and he played semi-professional ball. He played, I think, safety, quarterback, and punter for $6 a day, something like that. And the Colts called him for a tryout. And he went there with another guy, and they had to borrow money to make the trip. And it's my understanding the Browns were also interested in him. So he went and signed with the Colts. His first start was a mop-up role where he went 0 for 2 and threw an interception. And then the starting quarterback broke his leg, and he got to play. And it was not very good. His first pass was an interception for a touchdown. And on the second play, he botched the snap and fumbled the ball and turned the ball over. But after that, he started to play well. And at the last game of his rookie season, he started a streak that was 47 consecutive games with a touchdown pass. Now, that was a monumental thing back then. And at one time, it was considered to be like Joe DiMaggio's hitting streak record. And to tell you how monumental, it was that record stood for 52 years. And there are only 3 quarterbacks that ever broke it. And they are all modern quarterbacks playing in a 16-game season under the Mel Blount rule, which changed everything. And they are Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and Drew Brees. The only 3 quarterbacks to do that. With all the great quarterbacks that came. You know, in the early days, up until 1961, they played 12-game seasons. That's one of the things I always say made, Jim Brown played his first few seasons in a 12-game season and then played the rest of them in a 14-game season. So he came up in 55, was cut, so technically 56 is his rookie season. And so for several years, he played in a 12-game season. And then he played in a 14-game season the rest of his career. Well, if you think about it, a guy that plays in a 16-game season gets way more way more games under his belt in his prime. Think about it. If a quarterback like Tom Brady plays 10 years and a guy like Johnny Unitas plays 10 years, that means Tom Brady's playing, if he played 12 in a 12-game season, that's 40 extra games. If he played in a 14-game season, that's 20 extra games. So, of course, modern quarterbacks are going to hold all the records. Of course they are. And receivers just didn't get open back then. I've been posting a bunch of footage on my man Lynn Swan catching balls, just getting absolutely murdered when he catches them. And back then, you could just beat the receiver up the whole way down the field. There was no such thing as pass interference unless you tackled the guy or something. And also, there was, and it was enforced, was the intentional grounding. I watched a game where Terry Bradshaw was running out of bounds and threw the ball and got an intentional grounding. In the old days when you would go back to pass, there were more bad things that could happen than good things. Nowadays, when you go back to pass, there are more good things that could happen than bad things. You can get defensive holding, defensive pass interference, roughing the quarterback. These guys got killed. They got hit in the head, a minute after they threw the ball. That was not a penalty. They didn't get these large chunks of yards just in penalties just to go right down the field. You're at the 30-yard line, you throw a bomb to the end zone, and you get defensive pass interference, you get the ball at the 1-yard line, stuff like that. It wasn't a common thing in the old days. You had to earn that pass. And if you went back and couldn't find anybody, everybody was covered, you couldn't throw the ball away. It didn't matter if you were between the tackles, wherever you were. You had to throw to a receiver, and that's why it was risky to pass. So, Johnny Unitas, man, one of the greatest ever. He had 3 championships, NFL championships, and 1 Super Bowl, so 4 altogether. And, he hurt his elbow. I guess he played at the end with a really bad elbow that later crippled his arm, and he used to sign his autographs kind of like this somehow. And I know he had a long dispute with the NFL trying to get disability for that. But they wouldn't pay his pension and disability. And a gracious guy. Very, very, very underwhelming body. No muscle whatsoever. Reporters would often comment that when they saw him, they had no idea he was a quarterback. They would have never believed it when they would see his physique. But, man, he was a slinger. So I got to give my man Johnny Unitas props. Just another great quarterback to come out of Western Pennsylvania, along with Joe Montana, Danny Marino, Joe Namath, you name it. But the funny thing is the Steelers, when they let him go, one of the quarterbacks they kept in favor of him was Ted Marchibroda. And you guys probably know him as coach of the Colts. Now I have here a press photo of Dick Night Train Lane from 1961. And here he had blocked a punt to win the game. Or a kick, rather. Blocked a kick to win the game. Dick Night Train Lane, one of the best corners to ever play. Now there are all kind of rumors on how he got his name. One of them was he didn't like to fly and he took the night train. But the one that I believe is to be true is his roommate. He used to play every night the record Night Train, and his roommate was sick of hearing it, and he started calling him Night Train, and I believe that that's how he got his nickname. But he was third on the all-time interceptions leader list for years until Rod Woodson broke it, moved ahead of him, and so now he's fourth. But he's the all-time leader in interceptions at corner because the leaders are Paul Krause, safety, Emlyn Tunnell, safety, and one of the greatest football players that ever played, and Rod Woodson, who was a safety for most of his career, for part of his career. So I don't know how you factor that in. He was a corner, then transferred to safety after his knee injury. So as a straight corner, Dick Night Train Lane is your all-time interceptions leader, and one of the great players in history. And on the other side of him, that played for years, was Dick LeBeau. And that was one heck of a backfield there. One heck of a defensive backfield, because Dick LeBeau, I think at one time he was 7th on the all-time list of interceptions. And he may have moved down the list, but he was 7th last time I looked, I think. So, hey, that's what I have for you. Everybody have fun casting your ballots for the YouTube Sports Card Hall of Famers. A lot of deserving people. All right, guys. Thanks for watching.